So I tried going over the annotated bibliography instructions in class just a few minutes ago, and my computer did not want to share screen. So I'm making a video for you, and that way you'll also have it to refer when you need it. We are entering week 10, which means the annotated bibliography is due this coming Monday. Not today, but this coming Monday. So what exactly are you doing with this? Well, the annotated bibliography is in 3 parts. And again, I'm encouraging you, please, to pay attention to these instructions because each of these 3 parts is very important, and your annotated bibliography is worth 15% of your final grade. It's the first big point item that you need a good grade on because there isn't anything to replace it. If you bomb this, then that's the grade that's going in the book. All right. So part 1 is developing an introduction and thesis. In this, which is going to be at least a paragraph, maybe 2, you're going to define your topic with precision. What it is, why you think it's important enough to research. Obviously, having chosen something from today, it is significant, but bear in mind, for part B, you have to explain the historical context most directly relevant to your topic. As I made mention in the video about the list of preliminary sources, a lot of you have chosen ideas that are so specific and so much in the present that you can't really do something about them in the period of our course. So you have to figure out exactly how to broaden the context of whatever your topic is to do that. If, for instance, you wanted to discuss nuclear weapons, then you should think about the major changes in weaponry that occur through the time period of our course and how pretty much in every time period there is some idea about the huge catastrophic weapon that's come along. For instance, cannons or the iron, moving into the Iron Age, and then with industrialization from the Iron Age into the Steel Age, and all sorts of things like that. There are ways to broaden the scope of your topic by thinking more broadly about it. Just be sure that you do that because you've got to trace the history of this thing through the course. And then part C is composing a preliminary thesis statement for your final project. And what that means is a statement of what you plan to prove. It is not a litany of items that you'll address. It's what you plan to prove about your topic. All right. That's part 1 of your annotated bibliography. The second part is the bibliography part itself. For each of your sources, you will have a 2-paragraph assessment. For your secondary sources, you will, in the first paragraph, identify the author's thesis or the central focus with the quote of that thesis. What did this author set out to prove? Then you're going to list the main points that the author makes to back up the thesis or the central focus of the book, which means what major arguments does the author make to support this thesis. You're going to then identify the types of sources the author uses. Secondary sources, primary sources, tertiary sources, statistics. You want to identify them and give me specific examples with citation for specific usage. Then, in a second paragraph, you want to explain how this source can supply evidence for your final project. How are you going to use this source? The more thorough you are, the better off you are. There is a sample annotated bibliographic entry from the UCLA History Department. You can click on that link and it will take you there. You must have 6 secondary sources, not including your textbook, Harari, Frankopan, Diamond, Lepore, any source that we've used in class. These are, you may use the sources we've used in class, but these should be 6 separate sources that you have found yourself. For your primary sources, you need a minimum of 3. For that analysis, you're going to identify what type of source it is. Is it a court document? Is it a letter? Is it a speech? Is it an edict? Is it a announcement, a military report? What is it? Then you're going to discuss information on the author or authors of the source. Who are they? Give the information about when and where the source was created. Identify the purpose for which the source was originally written. Identify the audience to whom it was addressed. And then also, as always, that discussion of the bias or perspective of the author. What does the author take for granted about his society? How does this source work in terms of your overall project? And then, in a separate paragraph, you're going to explain the significance of the source to the topic of your final research paper, your final project. How do you plan to use it? Again, there is a link to a sample annotated bibliographic entry for primary source from the Fort Hays University History Department. It's a very good one. And then part 3 of your annotated bibliography is going to be an outline. You're going to list at least 3 main arguments that you're going to use to support your thesis or to prove your thesis. There's an example of that from Sacred Heart University at that link. For each of those 3 points, you're going to write a topic sentence, basically explaining that part of your argument. And then you're going to identify at least one specific example drawn from your other 9 sources to support each topic sentence, including relevant citation. So this is where you are actually looking at your sources, creating your arguments, and then laying them out in an outline with which sources can be used to best prove them. The total score you can get on this is 100, and again, this is 15% of your final grade. So 10 points is the introduction and thesis statement. 35 points are the annotations for each source. The outline is worth 20 points. Then the usage of 6 scholarly secondary sources, maximum you can get is 15. If you're using more videos, then you're using actual scholarly sources. If you're using random websites that aren't vetted, your grade's going to be lower on those. Then your use of 3 primary sources and your analysis of them. That's worth 10 points. And then, of course, APA formatting and grammar, also worth 10 points. So this is what you need for your annotated bibliography. And again, it is due this coming Monday, March the 30th, by 11:59 p.m. So you want to be sure that you have it done. After you've watched this video, if you have any questions, you may email me and I will see what I can do. Or you can ask me, for those of you with whom I have class, you can ask me in class on Wednesday.